Hi, everyone. This is Sharon, and I'm the host of Informed Advocate Podcast. And this is the intersection of self care, advocacy, and compassion for self caregivers. And today we have a lovely guest, Melisa. And we're going to be talking about everything self care and advocacy and what all of that means, especially for women and for Black women as well. So, welcome to the podcast. So, welcome, Melisa. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. As you said, my name is Melisa Alaba. I'm a breakthrough coach. I am a group practice owner, and I'm a money healer. So I help people heal their money wounds so that they can make more money, feel comfortable holding money, and do more in their business and their life. And I help women just own their life, their whole life.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, when it comes to self care, like in general, what does that mean for you? And what does that mean for you as a woman? And what does that mean for you as a Black woman?
So for me, it's so many different levels. I'm glad you just broke down all those different things, but for me, it's not just the things that we put on, like getting our hair done or our nail done. Certainly, that's a piece of it, but I see that more as maintenance. Self care to me is being able to predict my day, starting off with meditation, starting off with prayer, taking daily walks. It's owning my life. So I have to, go into this. I am a cancer survivor, went through active cancer for 3 years, have been in cancer submission for almost 6 years, thyroid cancer. And so that affects the energy that you have. And one of the things that I can say, I've been an entrepreneur since I was, I don't know, wee tall. And I share with you making my first million in business by the time I was 28. So one of the things that I realized is when I first got my graduate degree and I started practicing it as a licensed professional counselor when I was 25, is that corporate America, that corporate world didn't allow me to take care of myself and my kids the way I wanted to. So self-care for me is being able to manage my time and move in the world the way I need to. Um, it's starting my day at 10 o'clock when I see clients, it's ending my day when I need to. And it's also understanding how to ground myself when things get busy. Because, of course, as a business owner, you're wearing lots of different hats. So sometimes the grounding is just taking a few seconds and taking some breath in. I started practicing meditation in 2007. That was like a whole awakening for me as to how I was living my life and what it meant to truly be in the moment. So self care for me is like continuing these practices of like daily self love and sometimes like self love in the moment, like asking myself questions of what do I need now? Self care to me is eating good food. Self care to, that feeds my body. And again, like I said, being a cancer survivor, one of the things that we know, number one thing's predictor of you getting cancer again is how you eat, how you sleep, and the things that you drink, right? So, so adjusting as needs come up and understand what my body needs and desires, and then that deeper part where you mentioned being a Black woman, self care for me is having a community of other Black women that look like me, that can understand things that I'm going through, that I could go to so I can be able to play all my roles full out. So I have a community where it's just business women that I could talk to about up leveling, what that looks like, because my regular friends may not understand that. I have a community where we could just talk about hanging out, let's go shopping or what have you. And then my spiritual community, right? So without God, like I'm nothing. And so understanding how prayer, fasting, and all of that plays into my life, it's all of self-care for me. It's like that total embodiment. And one of the reasons why I was excited about being on your show is when I was reading through and just learning about you, because before I decide to go on any platform, I always do that. I saw embodiment. And
Mhm.
that was like, yeah, this is what I've been preaching. This is what I preach in my practice. I created a system around it. We could talk about that later. But it's not just something you throw on when you're trying to be rescued or you're stressed out. It's how you live your life, and it's a process, for many people to develop what works for them and figuring out how do I tune into what my body needs, my mind needs, my spirit needs, and then following the course to make sure that your life lines up with what you say is true to you.
Well, you just said a mouthful. I mean, you have really laid down so many, gems and things that resonate with me. And one of the things that when I talk to family, friends, and even, clients and people is those are those things. And so, like, one of the things that people talk about, especially women and mothers, it's like they just don't have time because they have so many hats. And, even taking the moment to ground themselves, let alone doing meditation. And you already talked about the benefits of it, but it's almost like, what is that other side if you don't do it? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, what is that other side if you don't do it? And then how can they start making those steps? Because it's going to improve not only their lives, but also anybody, whether it's their family, their work, and every aspect of themselves. So what is that other side for if they don't do it?
Absolutely. So one, I would start off with what you said, that last statement, which is, how do you even begin? So one of the things that we know for sure, especially when it comes to women of color, we have to begin with learning what good, healthy boundaries are. We have to begin to prioritize ourselves and figuring out what that looks like. Many of us wear so many different roles, right? So we're moms, we're wives, we're sisters, we're community leaders, we're doing all the things, and we often are running around like trying to rescue and save everyone as a caregiver. We also have instilled in us to be a people pleaser. Like, you want to make the people around you happy. And then for many, they get their validation through how many people they help that day. And then at the end of the day, of course, you're like, there is no room for nobody else. Close my door. Don't talk to me. I was there. I understand what that's like. So for me, I created a system. It's called the Be Healed system. Beautiful, have an amazing ass life every day. And in the system, the first thing is we break down what boundaries you need to take place in your life to even start moving in new things. So who do you need to say no to, and what things you need to say yes to? What's your vision for your next step of your life? So until you are really clear about what your true desires are, it's hard in that space to just doing things, or there'll be like a temporary fix. I take a day off, a sick day, which is really like a mental health day because I'm trying to catch up. But then I come back and I'm repeating the same behavior. I've said yes again to another project at work because I felt like I wasn't worthy enough to say no. I say yes again to cooking dinner for my kids because I'm afraid to ask my spouse for help, or he didn't help, or whatever the case, versus figuring out a plan, like what that looks like. Like, I have my families, my families, my folks that I work with, what does the plan look like for you now? Maybe one day a week we order out. If you can't do it, I can't do it, we order out one day a week, makes it simple. Maybe we have a food service, but figuring out what's going to work for you. And I actually have a food service. Like, I'm up leveling my business right now. We got our first package today. We had done previously where we would cook the food, and then I was like, that ain't working. So now the food is prepackaged and it's delicious. Oh my God, it was so delicious.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's healthy, but I'm always thinking about and adjusting and helping my clients adjust based on where they are right now, because certain things are going to require you to make other movements. Now your kids are in 2 things versus 1. So now you have to be here instead of there. So what do we do at home? So it's balancing all these roles. A lot of my clients are professional women, so they are in the C-suite. So that promotion requires a few extra hours, but yet they still want to manage stuff at home. So this might be time that we get a housekeeper so I can still keep the commitment to myself of working out in the morning. So it's literally like taking this old hat off of trying to do all the things to saying, hey, I need support. And that's one of the things that I can definitely say in working with all women. Like, for the last 20 years, I've been working with middle-class families, white families, Black families. And that has been like my sweet spot. And I think that's helped me to like really figure out a lot of things and manage myself in the space. But one of the things that I say between white women and Black women at every economic level is white women come with instilled values of getting support. So we don't have to talk about getting a housekeeper. We don't have to talk about food prep. We don't have to talk about somebody else trading off, like the neighbor pick up your kid this week and then you pick up the next week. They literally have been trained to give it to us. And that comes from ancestry and that comes from slavery, right? Where we manage their kid, where we manage cooking for them. So they're used to support. We ourselves have to get in a space where we start to accept support and know that that's a vital piece of actually having good self-care.
Yes, and that's
So
a
we start there, figuring that out.
yeah, that's a big one too, is the acceptance piece, because I've seen that. And even with myself, whether it's work or personal, as someone, I'm just so accustomed of doing things on my own. Not that I don't trust anyone per
Yeah.
se, but I'm just accustomed to it. And I've even had started to say, okay, if someone offers, and even for me to ask as well, but definitely if someone offer to receive that. But a lot of times people, they get offered, but they don't accept it. And then they're like, oh, I have all of this going on. I have this and that. And, but I mean, it's a matter of them training themselves, but it's like, yes, definitely in accepting, assistance. And I like the fact that you said about, hiring someone, or when it comes to, I'm just using the word carpooling, or having neighbors or friends or family, to help you out. There are some individuals who are okay with that, but still a lot of work done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's one of the big things. It's like figuring out what my values are and what I truly desire in this moment and where I need support now versus where I needed support 5 years ago. Because 5 years ago, before the kids came, it totally made sense for me to cook for myself. It totally made sense for me to clean my own house. I could get to it when I needed to. But then 5 years later, you may have a husband, two little toddlers, and then you work in a 9 to 5. And at that point, that's when I usually see folks and they're like, I just need you to help me figure this out because this all looks really crazy right now. And it didn't used to, but not even realizing that circumstances and situations have changed. So let's assess where you are now and what you need now to get you feeling better about yourself, getting you more calm so you can have the space to meditate. You can have the space to have a yoga practice. You can have a space to have date night. Like what those are the things that's going to fill you up. But it's first stripping away all the things that are literally taking more time and that we need to do first.
Yeah, yes. And that is really so, so important, because I've seen, many people at different levels just feel like they have to take the toll all by themselves, and especially just women of being caregivers, because kind of like part of my theme, like when it comes to my LLC as well as this podcast, is about caregivers, and I separated between personal caregivers and professional caregivers. But the key is with professional caregivers, most of the time you're both, you're a personal caregiver and a professional one. And it's kind of like, but in order for us to serve others, regardless of what type we are, is that we have to make sure we feed ourselves and be, it's that self-care for ourselves is key, because I've seen so many times in which, but personally and professionally, in which where individuals they will advocate and do everything for other people, but when it comes to themselves, not to say they won't quite advocate for themselves, but they have run themselves down, and then they're the one who needs help. And and then what stress does to the body and all of that stuff too. And so it's almost like that vicious cycle continues until we're like, okay, let's stop. What do I need to do now? And it's also that piece of surrender, in accepting something where it is, and to be able to receive help, and also offer help when you can. But it's like, to say, no, I can't, I want to, but I'm just not in a place where I'm able to. And then also when it comes to other people, where they are just as responsible for their own support and care, just as we are, because even with kids, they advocate for themselves.
And we train them not to, which is interesting, right? So kids come right out the womb demanding what they need with no regards to like, okay, midnight, I don't care if you're sleeping, what you sleep, I need some milk now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need somebody to hold me now. They come with this built into them to ask for what they need when they want it. We train them not to access that, and we train ourselves. So one of the things that you said about, when folks finally get to that stage where they're willing to accept help, oftentimes, and what we've seen in the past, and that's definitely shifted, and I definitely want to talk about that shift, but women would ask for help when they got to crisis mode.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was like, because again, in the community, it was encouraged to be all, do all. So to ask for help is like you're weak. And it's like, well, I saw my mom, and my mom is saying, hey, just pray about it, be strong, you got this. Mm-hmm. So they just keep going until it just all cords break. And then we see them in the emergency room, we see them calling for help. So training ourselves so we can train our daughters and the next generation that it's okay to get support when you're like, I ask for support all the time. I made it a practice, and it's something you have to practice. That's why we go to individuals such as ourselves and go to a coach so we can learn how to be okay with asking for help, even when you don't necessarily need to. I'm buying back my time, I feel like, when I ask for someone else to support me in something so I can work on some of the bigger visions God has asked me to. Also, like the last thing I'll say, which I thought was really good that you touched on, in this era, like when we're looking at right now, we hope that we're wrapping up COVID, but we've been hearing about the great resignation that has happened over the last 2 years. But guess what? It happened because this time of crisis helped people to understand what I've been doing, running out early in the morning, asking for permission to use the bathroom at work so I can run back to the desk and do this is not working. It has never worked, but it made me work because society was rolling with it. So I did it. But now that I've had time to see how much work I actually can do from home and had time not to have a long commute, I'm starting to buy back my time.
Oh, yeah.
With that, I've created a new business. With that, I'm more relaxed. With that, literally, I'm like, oh, there are other things that I can do. So I feel like this time has been like the great awakening for us to come to ourselves and say, how do I want to design my own life? How do I want to own my own life right now? So I can make sure I'm doing all the things that I need to do.
Yes. And that is so key. Because like you said, at least I hope that when it come to this pandemic, that people were able to, it's almost like what personal lesson that you learn about yourself, whether it's your job, personally with family and things like that. But you're right on key, when it comes to, especially when it comes to, it's more of a system. It's not even like one particular job itself.
Yes.
It's a system, and I'm like, oh my. And you're right. It's these expectations of, like working 12 hours just with 30-minute break.
Yes.
But
timing you before you get back. Like, like I've had clients like that. It's like, look, I want to go to the bathroom sometimes, especially like at a call center, and just take a deep breath. But literally, I have somebody who's like watching to see when I get back. So under these conditions, and I look at a lot of different systems. I do ancestral clearing with my clients. But this has been a patriarchal, capitalistic system of living in America. Us, and I'm talking about myself, not knowing exactly where you come from, but African ancestry stolen from my land, brought here. It's a system based on labor.
Yes.
And one of the things that, excites me and allows me to bring so many people through, almost like so many people through this system, is I got myself off that system early in my 20s. Because what I realized was I could do most of my work within 4 hours each day. Like literally, you're just holding me up at this job between 9 and 5. And I could create my own work and be done and work and be with my kids and be with my husband and plan my own life. So people are like starting to understand this system has just kind of been set up so I don't ever really think or do things for myself. I'm only like getting tidbits of my life during the week and living for the weekend so I can rest. And I think people are just start at all levels, not one particular job. Because I know VPs, I know all sorts of people who created businesses, created different things during this time to be able to say, I don't want to live like this. Like all of it is like the patriarchy, even using titles to influence you staying and moving up. So people are becoming much more awake, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, most definitely. And one thing too, I wanted to kind of go back on just a tad bit, because you were talking about kind of like when sometimes when some people when they ask for help, it's almost like when it's during a crisis. And one thing that I've seen and noticed too, and we touched a little bit on it before we started the recording, is that like when it comes to the body doesn't know the difference between, like being overwhelmed and being in crisis. But I think too, sometimes people are looking at, I kind of call tangible resources, something they can put their hand on, where even at that point, not unless, someone is, talking about taking their lives. Other than that, it's kind of like everything else really is inside of you. But it's a matter of, like calm and settling the nervous system down so that, kind of going back what you were saying, having those resources that people can use to say, what do I need right now at this very moment,
Absolutely. And I mean, people have been coming up with their own unhealthy, not, I just want to say unhealthy ways of coping for many years, right? So whether that was drugs, whether that's alcohol, whether that is food, whether that is codependent relationships, just constantly talking and having a lot of stuff that's being emoted rather than going in. So we all have coping mechanisms, whether they were passed down to us or we created them in order to continue to thrive. Some people totally shut off. So a lot of the work when you're working with someone like us is learning to open back up, right? So even opening up emotionally, because I see a lot of women who literally are dead inside because they've learned to attune so much in the corporate world that they are not even in tune with when something is agitating them, when something is bothering them. It's like they're shut off. So a lot of the work, like the movement, some of my clients I have doing dance, some of them yoga, meditation, walking, like we try out all the different tools in the toolbox, tapping, been utilizing tapping for years. Again, resetting the central nervous system and opening ourselves up to express, to feel, to get back into understanding what our inner spirit is saying. And for some, you say inner spirit, wisdom, intuition, about us in this situation so that they can have a knowing. And then the knowing will lead you to what you need to do next. But again, it's doing the work of healing, of expressing, of taking in and new ideas and practicing them so that you do know what to do when things come up. Yes. And you do recognize when old trauma plays itself back out in a current situation, because unhealed stuff always comes back up.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. And pretty much it's almost like everything with our discussion right here, because like I've already recorded, some other episodes, like our discussion right here, you just summarized it.
Yeah.
You just summarized everything, pretty much almost everything that the message that I really want people to know, especially when it comes to that self-care and the embodiment. And again, it's like there's certain parts of the system that can be very beneficial, but then at the end of the day, we have to recognize what's beneficial for us and in what way, and that we do have the resources, whether it's from the system or our own resources, as you said, our wisdom, intuition, and things like that, so that we can pretty much resolve our healing, and then whatever it is that our needs are, so that we can be, if we're going to be caregivers, whether it's personal or professional caregivers, we can be in a good place with ourselves and then also for others.
Absolutely. And I think it's also tapping into, so when I see people, because you mentioned in the system or out of the system. So I'm just going to take some liberties here as to what I felt like you meant by that.
Okay.
So for me, and then you can further explain if that's not what you meant, but for me, when I hear of people really thriving in the system, and to me, that's corporate America,
Yes.
that's working a regular 9 to 5. Those are people who are tapped into work that is meaningful, that they have passion for it. Just imagine when I see people who are doing work that they are passionless about, that often means that you're walking around dead for 8 to 10 hours every day with a face of pretense and not real.
Yes.
And that's very different from doing work that you really care about, you are passionate about, and then incorporating these tools in your everyday life. And that can happen in a corporate manner. It can happen in an entrepreneurship manner. And it can be vice versa. You can be an entrepreneur. And I've worked with entrepreneurs who were very much profitable, but not loving their current business and the services they were giving. And we're having to make that shift. So for me, alignment is when I am owning my life, I'm owning all parts of it. I'm able to move from a place not of working to just make money, but I'm moving from a place and making decisions because this is my life. This is the only life that I get. So I'm making choices. I see people even in private practice that are not happy because they haven't decided what their niche is. They haven't decided what their price point is. They have a hard time making boundaries with themselves and with others. And so therefore, they're not happy. So that's why we start with boundaries. And we start with designing what we actually really want all the way around, because it's available to us in any one of these systems, but it does require that we make good decisions based on our needs and our desires at this time. And guess what? Your needs and your desires can shift.
Yes.
The work that I was doing in my 20s, like I've been in this field for 20 years, but the work that I was doing in my 20s was with children and families. Now I'm primarily working with professional women. So it can shift. And as you grow, it's going to shift. We get to change. We don't have to be the same person. I think of Oprah, one of my icons that I love. She had her show for 25 years. And then she was like, hey, it's time for another season.
Yeah.
It evolved into something else. So we get to evolve and grow into something else, but it's knowing and trusting yourself when you feel that. It's just like moving. Many of us know it, like that intuition here, like, okay, I don't know why, but it's time for me to move. I met a young lady last night. She said, I love my job. I've been there for 13 years. It's amazing, but I'm just no longer challenged there. Don't know what's next for me, but I know it's time for me to move. And trusting that.
Yes, that's the thing, is trusting yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had, like I said, you've touched on so many things. And so for women, for caregivers, for those who support, what would you say would be, I guess you say, like the most important thing that they can do for themselves, and that is going to benefit not only them, but it'll benefit others as well?
Wow. I say you start off with prayer, asking God for support. And then from there, learning how to meditate has been truly powerful for me. It changed a lot of different things, because at the end of the day, you got to get to a point where you feel self-assured and you're trusting your inner spirit, and you can make decisions from that point. Everything else takes care of itself when we make the decision for whatever it is that we desire. And interestingly enough, like one of the comments that you made was, as a caregiver, we will figure out how to do whatever it takes, right? Kid is sick, we're gonna figure out how to get to the doctor. Whether we have the money, don't have the money. They need a new pair of shoes, we will figure this out. But a lot of times we don't have that same gravitas when it comes to ourselves. So starting with prayer, starting with meditation, and strengthening your inner core gets you to a space where you're like, no, I am going to fill myself up. No, I am going to make the investments in me so I then can make investments in other people. And not from a crisis perspective where, like, I see people that start businesses and they want to see the money tomorrow or whatever the case, but from the perspective of this is my life and it's time for the shift and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to see that happen now. And so that is what really changes lives. It's just like with an eating plan. If you're just doing it just for the diet, yeah, you'll lose the weight. But then once you lose the weight, if it wasn't something that was like permanent, a part of you, you'll gain it back. So it has to be like this lifestyle and this thought process of this is the way I live now. So even when things, because one of the things I teach in the Be Heal process is things get hectic and you'll look up and you're like, oh my God, my eating was off this week. Or, oh my goodness, I noticed I wasn't drinking my water, because I have like a little checklist that my clients do or whatever to stay in tune with these things. But then because you've learned that this is how you take care of yourself, you can easily rebalance and say, okay, going forth this week, I'm going to make sure I carry my water with me. This week, let me do some meal prep on Saturday. That's a way to honor self. And in all of this is self-honoring practices. That's all it is I'm deciding to honor myself by being true to myself, keeping my word with myself, and loving on myself by taking care of me so I can be here with other people.
Yeah, and I really love that you say that too, in honoring yourself, because I don't think that people really look at it that way. And it's almost like even when you just said it, and I'm like, ooh, I received that. You know,
Yes.
it's kind of like we really need to hear those words a whole lot more, because just in general, just by being women, we're kind of taught to help others, and not just taught. I think it's just something that comes natural just by being.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? You want to be helpful and want to support others and care for others and things like that. But at the same time, like you said, honor, it's like, I don't feel like it, if I don't feel like it, I don't feel like it. And that's okay, because you're honoring yourself.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that
And
is.
if you just need to go sit on the couch
Mhm.
and just go watch a movie, that's honoring yourself.
Yeah. Like giving yourself permission.
Yes, to
It's
be
even,
okay with wherever you are in whatever
yeah.
season.
Because just by you just saying that, what just popped in my mind is like, in one sense, we teach children to stand up for themselves.
Yes.
But then for some individuals, when it comes to themselves and they're like, oh no, I just, you just go ahead. But then I really wanted that, or didn't want that, or whatever it may be. But yeah, yeah. But yeah, this has been a wonderful, wonderful discussion. And I know that the audience is going to, really enjoy listening to this. Any last word before we end?
I would just say, one, again, thanks for allowing me to be here. If anything that I said that resonated with you, you want to get in contact with me, you can reach out to melisaalaba.co. I'm sure my information will be in the program notes. Be happy to support you. You can also reach out to me on Facebook, which is Melisa Alaba, spelled with one S. But definitely, this is the season, this is the time to, from the chaos of this season, definitely can bring clarity if we choose to pull the lessons from it and decide to make a different change for us. And you are granted permission. If you needed permission, today, Sharon and I are giving you permission to go out and own your life.
Most definitely. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for joining us for this Informed Advocate podcast.
Thank you.